The opinions expressed in this program do not necessarily reflect those of the host or the producers. This is not a test. You are listening to Universal Connection Radio, where everyone is on the same frequency. Welcome. This is your host, Roxanne Sartori, and today marks our 10th episode of UCR. It's been my intention from the inception of Universal Connection Radio to bring us closer, and what better way to connect than through understanding? Our judgments and prejudices begin to fade and become petty once we open to acceptance and allowance. When we become mindful of our thoughts, our thinking changes. Our frequencies adjust, and we find ourselves vibrating, resonating intuitively as one, as it is natural, not planted, but universally designed as our essence. So today it is with great excitement and joy I have as our guest Untitled Citta. Eunsahn is Buddhist priest, the Abbot of One Mind Zen. Welcome, Eunsahn.
Good morning, Roxanne.
Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
This is wonderful for me. I've always had great interest in Zen Buddhism.
Good. Works for me.
It works for me, too. And hopefully for the listeners, too. I'm sure there's a lot of curious people.
Let's hope.
Yes. So I was thinking the best way to open the show would be with the Four Noble Truths of Buddhism. And that would be the basics of Buddhism?
Yeah, the middle path, the Four Noble Truths, which includes the Eightfold Path, and then, I guess, from a Zen perspective, how that's evolved over the years.
Okay, wonderful. So would you begin with explaining the 1 through 4, what these are, and just whatever you feel would be helpful?
Okay. The first noble truth is quite often sort of shortened into life is suffering, which is not a great translation of dukkha, the Pali and Sanskrit word for that feeling of stress, of dissatisfaction, maybe suffering, but that whole feeling of, things just aren't quite right.
Okay.
So when we're in a position where we feel that we have that hole in us that needs to be filled by, if I got that new iPad, that would do it, or that new car, or that new relationship, or whatever, that's the dissatisfaction with the here and now.
Okay, so it's like desire. Desire makes us suffer, yes?
Yeah, desire is also one of those words that's not quite translated. There's clinging, there's craving, there's aversion. Overall, it's just a sense that, to use desire, it's just a sense that I want things to be different than they are now. I desire something more than I have now. Okay. And it can also be, I really hate what I have now, and desire it to be different.
And that seems to be the way of us here.
Well, that's what the Buddha came up with, and that seems to articulate the human condition pretty well for me.
Yes, it does. I would agree with that, most definitely. It's sentient. It's we're constantly looking for something else, and as you said, not in the moment.
Yeah, that's one of the benefits to meditation is that we can look at that sort of thing. When we meditate, it's not necessarily for a payoff.
Mm-hmm.
It's not necessarily to silence all thoughts, but it's a way to watch what we're thinking. It's a way to notice things as simple as, boy, that's really noisy out there. I can't get into this meditation today. My Dharma hall, Buddha hall, where we meditate, is on the fourth floor of an old mill building in Northampton in the Florence section.
Okay.
And during the summer, they would have car rallies, basically. They would have a guy with a PA system, and he'd be playing music, and, you know, you'd hear motorcycles revving up and traffic going by and all of that. And
Right.
when in a condition like that, that's where you really get to see things about what I think about it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the toughest thing for me was when they would play a song that I knew, and I would catch myself trying to both sing along and avoid singing. And that was interesting. I think that's one of the things we do when meditating is come up with little statements like, that's interesting.
Mm-hmm.
So the second noble truth is that it's the origination of this stress, dissatisfaction, the origination of that dukkha.
Mm-hmm.
And that's, as I said, one of the things that we're able to watch for when we're on the cushion and be aware of when we're off the cushion.
So when you say the origination of this distraction, it's actually being mindful of what you're allowing to go through your mind?
No.
What?
The allowing, I don't think there's any conscious effort on my part that says, yeah, okay, you can think that. It's, the thoughts are going to come of pleasure, of pain, of satisfaction, of dissatisfaction, and I don't necessarily allow them to come in. I suppose you could say I watch them, I observe them, I notice them, and then make the decision whether to hang on to them or just let them pass in and of themselves.
Mm-hmm.
When we have milk in the refrigerator and it's been there a little too long, past the expiration date,
Right.
we throw it out. We don't even have to smell it or taste it. We just say, okay, you're past the expiration date. You're going away. That's kind of like thoughts. We can hang on to them and taste them and smell them, or once the thought itself has passed, then it's passed. A great sage friend of mine who isn't even remotely a Buddhist once put it in terms of never have an argument with someone who isn't in the room. You'll never win. And that's when we have that conversation going on inside our heads about, oh man, what an awful dinner, or oh, work. Ugh, they have to pay me to do this. Things
Right.
like that. And we can hang on to them.
Oh,
Or we
very
can,
easily. Very
yeah.
easily. And we can build them and it can grow and it can turn into a basically an emotional catastrophe if we yeah, I guess I was using the word allow as in holding on
Hmm.
to in my statement before.
Yeah. Suzuki Roshi put it as the thoughts are going to come, but you don't have to invite them in for tea. So I kind of like that.
I like that too.
Yeah.
And they will come. Absolutely. They come, and it's a matter of being mindful to a lot of people do not pay attention to what they're thinking, and that results in actions which they're not taking responsibility for too.
That can certainly happen. Um, so the third noble truth is that there is a way to lessen this feeling of stress and dissatisfaction and so on.
Okay.
So it is possible that if we pay attention to our thoughts and not invite them in for tea and so on and so forth, then this struggling that we go through, that the first noble truth points out, it can fade.
Moment by moment.
Yes,
Okay.
yes. Sometimes they can come pretty quickly and they can go pretty quickly. And sometimes there's that one that we just want to hang on to and only let go of with claw marks in it.
Isn't that true?
And
That's so
then
true.
the means of getting rid of this dissatisfaction is by implementing the elements of the Eightfold Path. So that's the fourth noble truth.
Okay. The
And,
Eightfold Path. I know we don't have a huge amount of time to discuss this, but basically, what is the Eightfold Path?
right view, right resolve, right speech, right action, right livelihood, right effort, right mindfulness, and right concentration.
Wow. That's awesome.
And for a lot of people, things stop at mindfulness, right? That's sort of the flavor of the month these days. I guess TM, Transcendental Meditation, was a flavor of the month back,
Yes.
I guess, in the 70s, and there have probably been any number of them before and will come. But my thought on that is that, yeah, mindfulness, that is important. That is good. But that's only 1/8 of the Eightfold Path. And, as far as I'm concerned, that means that you have a 12.5% chance of the cessation of this struggle, suffering, the dukkha. And if you were to implement the other 7 elements of the path, then you might have a better shot. And of course, this all happens moment to moment. I also think of it in terms of, okay, so we're stuck on right mindfulness these days. Would any of us think it's really a good idea to latch on to right livelihood and
Right.
base everything around right livelihood. And that's, to me, that's the same thing.
It is.
And that right livelihood doesn't necessarily mean getting the right job or a job you like. It's got to do with compassion, loving kindness, and all that. Uh, Being a butcher, for example, would technically not fall into the right livelihood category.
Okay.
Although none of, basically nothing in Buddhism is etched in stone, and anything that's subject to causes and conditions might fall into a time where what you think would normally be the right thing to do
Mm-hmm.
turns out to be not the right thing to do.
Well, this is progressive Buddhism, isn't it? Isn't that part of, as things progress, things change? Of course, there's always the constant, but as things change, we have to change with them. For example, right now we are talking over the internet. I couldn't have imagined that when I was a child.
Right.
So much changes that we have to change with it. Any job is honorable if you're doing it with the right intention. Correct?
Yeah.
That's my opinion, anyway.
Well, it depends.
Excuse me.
It depends.
Yeah.
Gun manufacturer, maybe not so much. I suppose there are situations where having a weapon of whatever sort might lead to right action, but most of the time, probably not.
Yeah.
I
I
always,
see where you're going with that. Of course. That is true.
I
That is
always
true.
put it in terms of um, I'm pretty sure that mass murderers are pretty mindful when they're doing it, but that would not be right livelihood. So,
Yes. This is true. This is
so it,
true.
we're subject to causes and conditions, like I said, and
Yes.
the way that Zen deals with all this, the the Heart Sutra says, no suffering, no origination, no stopping, no path, which would seem to be diametrically opposed to the Four Noble Truths.
Okay.
But in reality, all of this stuff is created by our thinking,
Yes, it
right?
is. Mm-hmm.
If I start making right and wrong, if I start acting dualistically and looking at things in terms of hard and fast, right and wrong, that's all created by my thinking. And that thinking is going to lead to how I feel about it and what I do as a result of those thoughts and what I have, as you mentioned, what intention I might have. So we have to be mindful that our thoughts are quite possibly misleading.
Yes. But often misleading.
Every now and then we get it right.
Every now and then. It's true. It's true. Um, there are a lot of people experiencing what they consider to be personal enlightenment. Now, there's a movement going on, and a lot of people that I'm in touch with on the internet, people I meet in life in general, they're going through their own personal conscious awakening. And my question to you, Untitled, is there, within Zen Buddhism, is there a place for this personal conscious awakening, or is it all directed toward the one Buddhist belief of, in other words, someone like me, could I become a Zen Buddhist and still keep my own personal beliefs? Do I have to follow 100%?
Well, one of the things about Buddhism in general and Zen specifically is that there is no dogma per se.
Okay.
Right? Even the Four Noble Truths are juxtaposed with what's said in the Heart Sutra, right?
Yeah.
So in Mahayana Buddhism in general, the Bodhisattva path is important. And the technical definition of the Bodhisattva is a being who will postpone personal enlightenment, personal entrance into nirvana for the sake of all sentient beings. It's sort of like the great cosmic after you. The Bodhisattva will not cease being reborn until all others
are enlightened.
Right. And Zen Master Eunsahn would put it in terms of practice, practice, practice for 10,000 years, become enlightened, and save all beings. I sort of spin it around a little bit, where it's practice, practice, practice for 10,000 years, save all beings, and become enlightened.
Yeah, that is true. As we teach, we learn, don't we?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And to quote Suzuki Roshi again, he said, "There are no enlightened beings, there are only enlightened actions."
And Buddha was a teacher.
Absolutely.
And when people think about Buddhism, they see Buddha as, oh, that's a Buddhist god. That's not the case, is it?
No. The Buddha was basically, he started out as a rich kid, and his overall path was, at some point he saw someone who was sick, someone who was old, someone, he saw a corpse, he saw a wandering mendicant monk. And when he saw those four things, he realized that his perception of life hadn't been all-inclusive. So he went through living, he left home, he lived in the forest, following various and sundry teachers, various and sundry yogic practices and thoughts that these teachers had. And he realized that none of them were really doing anything to answer the big question he had. So eventually, after having gone through a phase of total self-denial and self-mortification as an ascetic, he decided, all right, this isn't working either. So he sat under the Bodhi tree and was determined to find out the answer to the big question. So he was a bit more driven than a lot of us are, but he's the one that became the awakened one, and the rest of us have some work to do. Mahayana Buddhism also speaks in terms of Buddha nature, which is that inherently we're all Buddha.
So,
however,
I'm sorry, just to clarify this, the word Buddha, it's Sanskrit, yes?
Yeah.
And it means, the meaning of it is enlightened and awakened, is that correct?
Yeah, the awakened one is,
okay.
I guess, the best translation of it.
I'm sorry to interrupt you like that.
That's okay.
Please continue, you were saying.
So Buddha nature is that inherent Buddha awakened one in all of us. However, we tend to have a few layers of delusion that have been accumulated. Some would say over many lifetimes. If you're not big on the rebirth thing, some bad habits that we've picked up along the way that are preventing us from realizing this Buddha nature of ours.
Well, that would bring, I'm sorry again to interrupt, but I had read that, and it's something that I believe, is that we know it's within us already. We know all of this, but we need to awaken to it.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that deep down we all essentially know right from wrong. And sometimes right is too hard and inconvenient. So we might just take the easy way out and do something that's easy rather than something that requires determination.
I agree with that.
And what I've found from my own personal practice is that the more I do it, the more I'm aware of when I'm making those choices. Doesn't necessarily mean I'm not going to make them, but I'm aware that I'm making them.
Well, it becomes a habit.
Yeah, everything can develop into a habit with practice.
True. Very true.
I went for, ages eating meat and whatnot. And I've made the decision that eating meat is not a compassionate thing to do. Actually, the slaughter of whatever animal it is isn't the compassionate thing to do.
Right.
So I personally have made the decision to be a vegetarian. Not all are, but that's how I interpret it.
Okay. And that is personal knowing. And I respect anybody's personal knowing. I think that that's their prerogative, and you go by feeling what feels right, what's correct for you. I have to say we're already 27.22 minutes into this, and I have one quick question to end this conversation.
Okay.
What does universal connection mean to you, Eunsahn?
I have to be brief about this, huh?
Yes, I'm sorry.
One of the great teachings of Zen and YN Buddhism can be summed up as not one, not two. You're you, I'm me, but there's really no separation.
Oh, I love that. I really do. That's awesome. Not one, not two.
Yeah.
Wow. That's really wonderful. Thank you so much, Eunsahn.
You're very welcome.
Hopefully we can talk again.
I'm sure we will.
Wonderful. Thank you again.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Well, there you've heard it. We had Eunsahn Citta. He discussed Buddhism with us and Zen Buddhism, which is, as I've said, a very interesting thing. I hope you all tune in again. And once again, thank you to Eunsahn. This is UCR, Universal Connection Radio, signing out. And stay tuned to the frequency. Bye.
Thank you for sharing the Universal Connection frequency.